Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congresswoman Yassamin Ansari. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're a member of the House Oversight Committee, and I initially invited you on for a conversation about the Clintons' testimonies before the committee in its investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But since that ask went out, there has been major news on Iran that I really wanted to get your perspective on, especially because you are the first Iranian-American Democrat elected to Congress. The United States is continuing to carry out a military operation against Iran following joint U.S.-Israeli strikes that started over the weekend. And those strikes killed dozens of members of the regime's leadership, including the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. So to start off the conversation, what's your reaction to what we've seen unfold over the past 5 days?
Thank you so much for the question. As you mentioned, this issue is deeply personal to me. I'm the daughter of two Iranian immigrants who fled this awful regime. I had a grandfather who was imprisoned by this regime, cousins who were murdered, and this regime is one that has massacred tens of thousands of Iranians just in the last couple of weeks. So this is a complicated issue because from the Iranian perspective, in terms of the people of that country, this moment there's a lot of celebration about the murder of the supreme leader, about the possibility that there could be a better future, a democratic future in the country. Also a lot of anxiety, bombs are falling, lack of clarity about what comes next. But I think for the first time in a long time, certainly a feeling of potential hope. Now, as an American, I think there are a lot of feelings as well that are also very valid. The United States and the American people, have made very clear that they don't want another endless war in the Middle East. They don't want to send their sons and daughters to harm's way. We've already had 6 service members who've been killed, and the president has been very callous in casually stating that there will be more lives lost in this illegal war. He did carry out the strikes, and now many in his administration have called it a war because it is, but without making a case to the American people and without congressional authorization, which is illegal. So at this point, I think it is very important that the president come to Congress, seek authorization for the war, make the case about why this is in our national security interests as Americans, and then provide a path forward. We don't want to see endless military operations. We don't want to see boots on the ground. And at this point, with so much of the regime's apparatus killed, I hope that the administration is thinking critically about what the plan is for a democratic future for Iran, instead of leaving the country in chaos and destruction, which could lead to civil war and more lives lost.
I hear you, and I hear the unique perspective that you have. If President Trump went to Congress, tried to get authorization before the strike, is that something you would have supported? Do you think he's made the case now for a war?
I don't think they have made the case, no. And I think that the issue is that they have changed their justification and changed the message at every turn. I mean, from, first, they said it's about well, first of all, when they talk about nuclear, last summer, Donald Trump said the nuclear program was obliterated. Then they said there was an imminent threat. This is what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, said. And then when probed on what that imminent threat was, he said that Israel was going to attack Iran and Iran was prepared to retaliate. In no world is that the definition of an imminent threat. To this day, there's been no justification, no plan. Yesterday, the Secretary of Defense said this could go on for weeks and that there would be death and destruction coming from the sky. I'm also very concerned about civilian casualties in all of this. So short answer to your question again is no, the case has not been made, and it's urgent that it do be made before more lives are lost.
I'm really curious as to what's next for the people of Iran, because President Trump, when he was announcing Operation Epic Fury, he urged Iranians to take to the streets, to take over their government, and he said once the bombs stop dropping, go and take over the government, but it's really unclear as to when that's going to be. There's really no timeline, a real concrete timeline at least, as to when this military operation will end. And you said that you want to, quote, free Iran and a future of democracy and dignity for the Iranian people. President Trump, he said he also hoped that the IRGC and the military police would lay down their weapons and surrender to the Iranian people. I mean, do you see that happening? Do you see a strategy that's beyond President Trump essentially clearing out layers of the regime's leadership, dozens of the government leaders as well as the military ones, killing the Ayatollah as well, and then essentially telling the Iranian people, good luck, take over your government from there?
I want to be clear about the history of this as well. Back in January, when the protests were taking place in Iran and over 1 million people took to the streets to demand freedom and an end to the Islamic Republic, Donald Trump took to Truth Social and said the same thing. He said, take to the streets, take over your institutions, help is on the way. And then within days, the regime shut down the internet and massacred tens of thousands of people, and that help never came. And I think that's an important reminder of how ad hoc this entire thing has been, and in my view, what a lack of planning there has been by the administration. I asked very clearly during the one briefing that we have had as members of Congress by senior administration officials, and I asked if there is a plan and if they are considering a democratic transition to Iran. And it was made very clear that that is not part of this mission.
I do now want to pivot to some video we saw this week from the Clintons' testimonies in front of the House Oversight Committee. They were testifying in your investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier, the convicted sex offender. And you said on the day of former President Bill Clinton's testimony it was a historic day for transparency. You called former Secretary of State Clinton's deposition an incredibly unserious clown show. So did you learn anything valuable from either of their testimonies?
The first day with Secretary Clinton, I thought was ridiculous because she had absolutely no relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and had never met him and had previously told the committee that, but either way was asked the same questions over and over again for 6 hours with no real, she just repeated the same thing. Honestly, I thought the thing that I learned and the most helpful at the very end was that the Republican members who showed up to this deposition, even though they had not showed up to previous depositions with people like Les Wexner, who was Jeffrey Epstein's top financier and benefactor, was they started asking the secretary for advice on how she would handle this investigation and who she thinks, should be brought forward. So I thought that was, helpful, but no, I thought it was a waste of resources and time of so many members of Congress. During the president's deposition, I do think that one was fair, and I think it was important to do because the former president was in the Epstein files and had a relationship with Epstein and Maxwell, and I think it was important for him to answer those questions about the timeline and nature of their relationship. He also, mentioned, I think one of the most important things that we did learn was a discrepancy became clear in regard to what Donald Trump's excuses as to why he ended his relationship with Epstein. President Clinton recounted a conversation he had had with Donald Trump, where Donald Trump had told him that it was over a land deal, whereas publicly Donald Trump has said that it had to do with his behavior and Mar-a-Lago. So that's why, I think all of these depositions are critical. There are so many more questions to be answered. We're really just at the start of our investigation. Just yesterday, the Oversight Committee subpoenaed Pam Bondi, so she will have to now come forward before our committee and answer questions about how she is involved in the most egregious cover-up in American history.
Both Clintons have long denied any wrongdoing as it relates to Jeffrey Epstein. They also both said they were not aware of any sexual abuse or trafficking perpetrated by Epstein or his longtime accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. The former president had the longer relationship with Epstein. Actually, he was the only one with that relationship. The Secretary of State, she said she never met Epstein, does not have a relationship with him at all. But the former president, he characterized his relationship with Epstein as cordial and friendly. He said he didn't know Epstein well enough to be a friend. He wouldn't say that he was a friend. But after seeing all of the photos, hearing about all of his travels with Epstein, and seeing his entry into Epstein's 50th birthday book, do you believe that?
He answered, he was asked a lot of questions about all of that, and the context of those photos were brought up over and over again. He said they were during, and there's flight logs to go with this, they were during trips related to the Clinton Global Initiative to different countries. Look, I think I don't 100% believe anyone right now. And the reason for that is because we don't have all of the information. The Department of Justice is still withholding millions of files, and they've managed the entire process atrociously. We just learned that they are withholding FBI investigative materials around allegations against the president. So that is why we will continue to say we need to end this cover up and we need all of the files. And nothing should be withheld because it is against the law. And once we finally have all of the information out in the public, there will be a lot of questions around investigations that need to take place by the FBI and others into these allegations, and people need to be held criminally accountable if they committed a crime. It's that simple. But many people are, there's so much there. Many people are mentioned in these files, and I'm not saying that anyone mentioned has done anything wrong. It's really about where those credible allegations are in regard to actual child sex trafficking and enablement or potentially taking part in these crimes, and that's the most serious and most urgent priority.
I know that you said that this is only essentially the beginning of this investigation. You want to talk to a lot more people. You don't 100% believe anybody. Is that it for the former president then? If you're saying, hey, I didn't 100% believe anybody, that includes him, obviously. Is that the end of the road for him? Would you want him in for additional questioning? I know that was 4.5 hours of a deposition. I mean, do you think he has any answers or unanswered questions that you still have?
Not until we get the entirety of the files. I think once we have the entirety of the files, if there's anything else related to him that require responses, then that would be an appropriate time. But until we have all of the information that is available with our, under the, in control by the US government, it's difficult to get to that point.
And I know you said you subpoenaed Pam Bondi. How's that going? Have you heard any response? Is she coming in? Is she going to testify?
She has to. She will be subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee. Republicans voted for it as well. So by law, she will have to come forward and testify. And it's specifically in regard to the Epstein files.
And this is something that a lot of Americans, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, they want transparency on what's next for the committee's investigation.
We have a number of upcoming depositions, including with two of Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers, Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn. Those are very important because these people managed his estate and his finances for many years and could be potential co-conspirators. We also will be looking to subpoena Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, whose relationship with Epstein has been discussed and that he has changed his tune on many times. And we will have a number of on-the-ground oversight hearings. We have announced that we'll be heading to Florida in April for an oversight hearing on the ground in Palm Beach near Mar-a-Lago to speak to people who are impacted there and who may have more information.
And as you sit here in this investigation now, what is the biggest question you still have?
My biggest question is, why is Pam Bondi withholding these investigative materials that pertain to allegations against the president from a woman when she was a minor? The FBI interviewed this woman 4 times, and the New York Times and NPR and others reported last week with this explosive, revelation, thank God, through their investigative reporting, that the DOJ under Pam Bondi has been withholding this information. And that is very damning and just goes to show how deep this cover-up is.
as we see more in your committee's investigation, I hope you can come on and break it down with us. Thank you so much for the time today. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much.